It's a great honor and pleasure to be here with Professor Menachem Kellner, who is the author of Must a Jew Believe Anything, which I highly encourage folks to pick up. And he writes in the intro, he distinguishes between faith as primarily trust in God expressed in concrete behavior versus faith as primarily the acknowledgement of the truth of certain faith claims. And to potentially sum up what this book is about, he closes the intro, must a Jew believe anything? If belief is a matter of trust in God expressed in obedience to the Torah, my answer to the question is that a Jew must believe everything. If belief is the intellectual acquiescence in carefully defined statements of dogma, the answer is that there is nothing that a Jew must believe. This, written about a decade ago, has really taken storm and kind of raised a lot of questions for us. So let me ask you, why did you write this?
Largely because, I guess to be absolutely honest, because my Jewish identity is largely tied up with what you would call Jewish nationalism. I think that Am Yisrael is the core of my Jewish identity. And it troubled me to see the way in which the Jewish people are dividing against each other in ways which I thought were very damaging. I write there, I think, it's been a long time since I wrote this, you probably know it better than I do. But I was wondering how many Judaisms our grandchildren would have, as opposed to the idea that we could all get along and disagree. I mean, Judaism has historically been full of disagreements. And why do the disagreements today have to lead to so much divisiveness, so much postulating? I don't know how to say that in English, but
yes, disqualifying
people who don't agree with me narrowly, and it's very rare. Let me tell you, can I tell a brief anecdote?
Please.
About the last 10 years of my career at the University of Haifa, I ran a program in Judaic enrichment, which we got a lot of money from a guy in South America who was interested in supporting us, and it was what we called Hora'ah B'li Hatafa, teaching without preaching. And as part of the deal with the funder, we had one of our teachers was a young Haredi fellow from Yerushalayim. He used to tell me how much he enjoyed coming to Haifa, because in Yerushalayim, you as a Haredi Jew would only eat in a pizza parlor which had a hechsher from your specific Rebbe or your Hasidic group. Whereas in Haifa, there were so few Haredi Jews, they all ate in the same pizza parlors. So expanding on that idea, I wrote the book so that Jews would eat pizza together.
So do you think that those demands for acquiescence and conformity around belief have increased in recent decades? And how is that affecting Klal Yisrael at large right now?
Well, certainly they've increased since July of 1789, with the French Revolution, when Jews were the first time basically invited to join the outside world. Invited to be, in effect, both Jews and humans at the same time. And one of the prices they had to pay was to suddenly start defining themselves. You know, if you had asked the Rambam what was his Jewish identity, I don't think he would know what you were talking about. If you asked anybody, any Jew up until the modern era, they wouldn't think in terms, they wouldn't start the day off brushing their teeth and asking, how am I being Jewish today? You know, is my Judaism cultural, is it religious, is it national, is it ethnic, is it political? This is a function of modernity. So it's not as if it started in the last decades, it started a couple hundred years ago, but it's gotten worse and worse and worse. Well, in Israel it's gotten worse and worse and worse because of all the government money. So, you know, if this Hasidic group gets money, the other one doesn't. Right. If this party gets money, the other one doesn't. But I'm being facetious here. That's like an outgrowth of...
How do the social pressures to conform to certain beliefs distort those beliefs themselves, if at all?
Well, that's a very interesting question. In the sense that my father Shalom was an Orthodox rabbi in a number of communities here in the United States. And his first criterion when he was talking about people was, were they ehrlich or not? Now, ehrlichkeit is decency and humanity and...
Bal midot.
That's right. In modern Hebrew, was the person of Bal midot or not? It never occurred to him to ask how Orthodox. My father was an Orthodox rabbi. That wasn't the first question. I mean, he was interested, he spent his life in education. He was interested in making people closer to the fulfillment of the mitzvot. But that's not the thing that motivated his assessment of human beings. He used to like to say that the mitzvah of Ahavat Yisrael, of loving the fellow Jew, that's easy to fulfill. It's loving that Jew and that Jew and that Jew, that's much harder. But loving the Jewish people.
Yeah. So it feels like this one question, which the book is framed after, is, must a Jew believe anything? But I guess the other question can kind of be, can a Jew be commanded, or can a person be commanded to believe anything? Because it feels like the mind is not a switch. You turn it on or off to believe this or that. That the mind is more, the brain is more complicated than human will. I can't really say I will to believe this and thus I do.
Right.
And so if I recall correctly, some of the medieval Jewish thinkers and later don't include any beliefs in the Taryag mitzvot. That within the counting of the mitzvot, they say maybe it's implicit, but you can't actually command.
Right. You've raised, again, important points. First of all, technically, this is a debate between Rambam on the one hand and Rabbi Chasdai Kreskas on the other hand, and then Yitzchak Abravanel tries to solve the problem. But so this is an issue is raised, but it's also a debate here in this book between Misei and Rabbi J. David Bleich, who strongly thinks that you can command beliefs. And I think that that is basically incoherent for the reasons that you just raised, and it's also not part of the Jewish tradition. In historical terms, the first person to tell us that as a Jew you have to believe X, Y, Z up till 13 was the Rambam. Literally. There is no Jewish text before the Rambam which lays out in didactic fashion, in clear fashion, a list of beliefs which a Jew has to believe in order to be considered a Jew. The Rambam is very strong about this. And the question is, my point of view, this I guess you would call it is like vaguely orthodox, is that he was doing something new. Jews who feel that you can't have something new that important in Judaism would have to say, well, no, it was implicit. It was something. I find that again incoherent. According to the Rambam, if you question God's incorporeality, for example, you exclude yourself from the Jewish people, you lose your share in the world to come. Now, what do you do with a person? And for that, he was criticized during his lifetime by the Rabbad, Rabbi Avram David Poskier, who said there are Jews greater than he. Yolim v'tovim mimenu, who mistakenly thought that God was corporeal. The Ravid wasn't saying that God was corporeal. He was saying that basically it wasn't a big issue. But if you take this whole business seriously, then what about a Jew who, before the Rambam, never read his Ikarim, and he thought that, okay, God has personality, which for Rambam would mean this guy was a heretic, or that God, in some sense, shares corporeality. It just doesn't make sense to say up until 1168, when the Rambam published his Ikarim, you could say that. And then after 1168, you lose your share in the world to come. I don't see that.
So in the Rambam's response to societal pressures, that he felt the need to issue these 13 principles of faith, are those in any way similar to the societal pressures today that are creating the same sort of thing? Today, for example, conversion, all of a sudden you have to believe X, Y, Z. You have to believe that the Torah was received at Sinai in this particular fashion. Are they responding to similar societal pressures or just different phenomena?
You ask a lot of very good questions. I'm not sure. It seems to me, like I want to be Lilamed Zchut al Rambam, to don him the Kav Zchut and all.
Give him the benefit of the doubt.
Give him the benefit of the doubt, thank you. One of the nice things about living in Israel for almost 40 years is that your Hebrew stops improving after a while, but your English never stops deteriorating. So you end up like illiterate in two languages. I think Rambam was responding to communal pressures, that the Jewish community was under a lot of pressure all over the world, but especially also in the Islamic world in which he lived, because it was so easy to become a Muslim. You didn't have to go to the church, you didn't have to go to the mikveh, to baptism. All you had to do was say a sentence. And the sentence, wasn't theologically wrong. It says there is one God, Muhammad was his prophet. Okay, there is one God, we agree with that. So Muhammad wasn't his prophet. It's not like, it's much easier. And you say that sentence and all of a sudden your whole status improves. Your taxes go down, build a nicer house, whatever. So there's no doubt there was a lot of pressure, and I think Rambam wanted to make it clear to Jews, ad kan, to this point, and beyond that, you really can't go. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is that he was deeply influenced by his own Rebbe, Aristotle.
Right, yes.
That's another
Well,
possibility.
what would you say to a Jewish person today who said, you know, I really love learning Torah, I love mitzvot, I'm increasing my observance in mitzvot, but I don't know if I believe that the Mashiach is going to come on a donkey in this fashion. I don't know if I believe the Torah was revealed in that traditional fashion as I'm taught. I don't know if I believe in the resurrection of the dead as traditionally thought. I have big questions and doubts about those. Would you say this is an inadequate Jewish expression? Would you say this person is not fulfilling Judaism's ideals? I mean, how would you
My
advise this
impression
person?
is that if I were to say that this is an inadequate Jewish expression, I would be excluding an awful lot of frum Jews.
Yes.
There was an article a couple of years ago in Commentary magazine by a lawyer in New York named Lefkowitz, I think Jay Lefkowitz, on what he called social orthodoxy. And when you talk to people, namely that people are not troubled by specific beliefs, but they want to live a frum life.
Right.
For all kinds of reasons, like Google, whatever, but they want to live a frum life. So that's it. The more I talk to people, the more it seems to me a very widespread phenomenon. And from the kind of perspective out of which I come, it's clearly, for me, better that they do that than they say, okay, since I can't believe in the physical resurrection of the dead, I'll do nothing. The Talmud itself teaches us that better to do things slowly, Shema, not for the right reason.
Right.
So very clear to me. Anyway, I'm not going to exclude myself from various communities, so I won't go further. But one thing, I personally can't wrap my mind around the idea of a third temple where we actually sacrifice animals.
I'm in the same camp.
It just seems to me retrograde and not what Judaism really should be all about. Aside from the practical issues, just imagine issuing the tenders for the contractors to build the temple.
Right.
And the corruption involved.
Yeah.
Not to mention the smell of the thousands of animals.
Right. Well, I mean, when I personally wrote an article on that particular issue, saying that I struggle. Not that I even deny that I struggle with this as the future as opposed to the past. The types of accusations, and I don't know if historically it was always like this, of arrogance, of not being religiously committed, of distorting Torah, and the like, were enormous. So
See, that's a function of the internet.
Right. Yes.
If you were a rabbi in Phoenix, Arizona, making claims like that, who the hell would know about it?
Right. Exactly. Right. Okay. So my last question for you: a decade later, has anything changed for you? Do you feel more strongly about this approach? Have any nuance changed in how you would articulate this?
Well,
what would the next level be if you were to write a next
a decade later, I'm a lot older.
Right.
My arthritis is more impressive. No, I agree with Kellner.
So do I. So do I.
Right,
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Professor. Yeah.